thank you all for coming, and I know that there'll be people watching on video about this important pedagogical technique. So about a year and a half ago, the Gallup and Purdue came together to look at studies on, an extensive study on when students graduate 10 years out, 20 years out, and they look back on their college experience. What is it about that college experience that makes them feel like their time in college was well spent, that their money was well spent, that their efforts were well spent? And what they found was that, sadly, a whole lot of students didn't feel that their time in college was well spent. But those who did overwhelmingly reported extensive long-term learning projects with their professors as being instrumental in making sure that they were successful. Service learning is one of those important pedagogical practices. And there, I see a lot of students out in the audience. You guys are really fortunate to be here at ESU, where we have so many faculty who have devoted so much of their time to maximizing service learning and utilizing service learning. And we get to hear from four of the best tonight. I do have to say, just like Jem had said, I think that these four women are some of the finest examples that ESU has with regard to their scholar teachers. They are all active in their research, they're active in research and pedagogy, and they're very focused on teaching. And so I'm happy to introduce to you four of them. I'll read a short bio on each of them. Olivia Carducci. Dr. Carducci is an associate professor in mathematics. She's been using service learning projects since 2008 in her introductory to mathematical modeling class, and they've done some amazing work. It's just mind-boggling. She is published on using service learning in mathematics, as well as she has publications on other pedagogical techniques in mathematics, and she focuses her scholarly efforts on stable matching, an important problem in mathematics. Luann Batson-Magnuson is an associate professor at East Stroudsburg University with 27 years experience working with pediatric and adult clients in speech, language, and cognitive communication disorders. She's worked both in school settings as well as home care settings, and we're very fortunate to have her here in our Speech Path program. She has numerous publications in these various areas and holds a certificate of clinical competency in speech language pathology. Dr. Magnuson is the co-coordinator of the Service Learning Initiative Committee, and she's the member of the American Speech Language and Hearing Association, Pennsylvania Speech Language and Hearing Association, and the Northeastern Speech Language and Hearing Association board member. So she is giving of her time both at ESU and beyond. Laurene Clossey, a licensed social worker, is an associate professor of sociology, social work, and criminal justice. She's been at ESU for 10 years. And prior to ESU, she taught at California State University in Sacramento, as well as Villanova. She received her BSW from Western Connecticut and her MSW from Columbia and her PhD from Bryn Mawr. Her research interests focus on mental health service, and she has numerous publications. Beth Sockman is professor of professional and secondary education. She is passionate about designing learning environments with authentic learning experiences like you find in service learning. And she focuses on undergraduate as well as graduate education. Using a systems thinking approach, Beth researches pedagogical development and uses service learning as a key strategy to meeting learning goals. Her students truly solve problems with her and as they evolve their knowledge. It's amazing what these four women are doing for the campus, for their discipline, for their scholarship, and for our students. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.
Well, that was some introduction. Thank you. So we're here today to talk about service learning. And I know for me personally, service learning has been a tremendous addition to my pedagogical repertoire. It is something that I am truly passionate about, that I have learned so much from doing. It has really enhanced my teaching. It's not good for every class that I teach, but when it's appropriate, wow, does it enhance my course. And so I really strongly encourage, in terms of pedagogy, to the professors who are here, that this is something to look into. It has also informed my scholarship, as was mentioned in the introduction. I have published in math pedagogy on service learning and in service learning journals, which we have done as a group. And so there's opportunities for scholarship. It has certainly contributed to my scholarly development. And of course, we're all members of the Service Learning Initiative Committee, so there's service. And that, in case you don't know, is the faculty trifecta. All right? If you have done all three of those things as a faculty member, you're really on your way. So we are here to help educate all of you on service learning and support your thoughts about service learning. So our objectives for this talk are that you leave knowing more about service learning than you did when you came in. And for those of you who are professors, that you maybe think about a course that you teach where you could learn service learning and you get a chance to sort of think about how you might incorporate service learning into that. And for some of the students, maybe you could think about how and offer advice to your professors about how they could incorporate some service learning into some course that you're taking or planning to take. All right? So one of the things that Dr. Green talked about in her introduction was that students need experiences that help them connect what we do here at the university in the ivory tower, right, to the things that are going on in the real world, as if this isn't real, but all right, in the real world, okay? And service learning helps with that, okay? So service learning has three parts to it. There has to be a meaningful and useful community service project that has to be done. That is absolutely critical. The project has to be connected to the course. That's why it's not right for every single course, because some courses it's just very hard to find that project that's connected to the course. And then at the end, you have to have some sort of reflection that the students do on what they've learned. Right? And that is the big thing about service learning. So there's lots of service, and all service is valuable in its way, but it's not all service learning. So right now, we're going to think about what is service learning and what types of service. We're going to actually do two types of service at this point, and we're going to ask you to think about whether or not it's service learning. So we have this little checklist. You want to pass out the checklist, please? We're ready for the checklist. We're going to give you a checklist, so you don't have to remember this slide, okay, that you can use to help yourself decide whether you think the things that we're doing here in this room would constitute service learning. So we're looking for integration with a course or with some sort of learning, right? There has to be a community partner, someone who is benefiting from the service. We have to have academic learning. We have to have meaningful and important connections with the classroom. All right? And finally, there has to be some sort of assessment where we determine that the students did or did not learn what we wanted them to learn, and that the students have a chance to think about what they learned as well. So those are the things. Obviously, we're not going to be able to actually hit all of those marks in this short amount of time that we have here, but we are going to try to help you see what's going on here. So the first service learning project that I want to talk about is about supporting our troops. Just a minute, not yet. Okay. My son is in the Army, and so I have a real soft spot for the troops who are deployed. My son is currently safe at Fort Benning. He's taking a class at Fort Benning, and he is safe. All right? But not all of his colleagues are safe. We have service people out in harm's way, deployed all over the world. And so Crown Royal, the whiskey company, has set up this website where you can go to the website and send a package to a deployed soldier. So you actually have my permission. If you're in my class, you know you would normally not have my permission. But you actually have my permission to take out your phones and go to this website if you choose. We're going to go now, if you choose. Uh-oh. It worked this early. It worked in my office. We're going to hopefully get this link to work. Sometimes the Wi-Fi doesn't work. Oh, great. Anyway, if you are on your phone and you've been able to go to the link, you'll see first they ask you for your birth date. Even though there was no whiskey involved in all of this, you're not allowed, you're supposed to be 21. So they're going to ask you for your birth date. You're going to be able to try that, huh? Oh, it looks like we're getting there now.
We all have experience with websites, right?
Here we go.
All right. Okay, hold on. The birth date thing will probably come up unless somebody's done it in here. All right. All right. How to join our mission. Click on, if they ask you for your birth date, you have to put your birth date in. You have to be 21 apparently. And then you click on Pack a Bag online. And pick 4 things that you would like to send to our soldiers. I usually pick coffee, nuts, lip balm.
No cookies?
I pass on the cookies, but cookies are good. I pick lip balm and oatmeal, I think. But you could pick anything you want. Beth is doing this for me, so.
I want cookies.
Cookies are good. Cookies are good. All right, so you've got your 4 items. If you scroll down, you can add a personal message if you want. Thank you for your service, whatever sort of thing you want to say. And then you have to enter your email address. I did this a month ago, probably on my personal email. I'm not getting emails from Crown Royal, so don't feel bad. I don't know why they're collecting email address, but no, I haven't gotten anything. So I don't know. All right, so this makes me feel more connected with our deployed soldiers. It makes me feel like I've done something to help them, and I feel, there we go. I knew they'd want your ID.
You're all going to know my birthday now.
You could just put January 1st. It's all right with me. Pick one so that you're old enough that you're 21. All right. Okay. So this is a great activity. The website is on your handout, so if you don't have your phone now and you want to do it later, or if you want to do it at any point during this talk, right, we've all participated and supported our service people. Now, I want you to look at your checklist. All right? Does this activity, this wonderful activity, meet the definition of service learning? Just think about it. You can mark your checklist or not. It's up to you. And we're going to have another activity in a minute while they think about it. So we're going to transition. All right? And you get to think about whether this is service learning. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Laurene for a few minutes.
And I have help. Let me turn around and tell you I have help. This is Taylor D'Amato, who's a student in my class, and we're going to describe a problem to you that we're very concerned about, and that problem is human trafficking. It's a modern form of slavery. It's a multi-billion-dollar criminal industry that takes freedom away from 20.9 million people around the world. So it's a significant problem. Every year at ESU, we have an annual event called Global Week. And Taylor, who's in my class, we're going to be doing an event called Human Trafficking in our own backyard, and she'll explain it to you in a minute when I stop talking. So this slide gives you some examples of the range of activities that constitute human trafficking. Now the course is entitled Social Work with Communities and Organizations. This course focuses on developing knowledge and skills to practice with communities and organizations. The idea is to develop skills that empower people. The students are to learn how to engage communities, how to empower them, how to build capacity, how to educate them. And they also learn some skills about program development, community planning, etc. It's all there behind me. I'm going to let Taylor now explain what we're doing in the class. And then we're going to engage you in a project, which we'll explain. So, are you mic'd, Taylor?
What?
Do you have a microphone?
No.
Okay, so, aha.
Okay. So all semester we've been trying to figure out how we thought raising awareness about sex trafficking would be the best approach. And we thought the best thing would be to educate and raise awareness, and then we're going to raise money for an organization called BAST, which is the Valley Against Sex Trafficking. So what we did yesterday, Dr. Patero actually had a presentation about human trafficking in general, not just sex trafficking, because most people think that this is a problem that just happens somewhere else. No, not a lot of people think that this happens here. So we thought it was a good idea to educate people. So during Global Week, we're having an event, like she said. It's called Human Trafficking in Our Own Backyard. And a member from VAST is actually coming to speak and give a presentation. If you should all go.
Yes, definitely.
And then we're also raising money for them. So we made ribbons, which you all do in a little bit. And we are selling baked goods and we're selling wristbands to raise money for this organization. And hopefully raising your knowledge on this problem will help people become more aware of the situation.
This is the Human Trafficking Awareness Ribbon. It's royal blue. I don't know if you can see my ribbon because I have a black background and it's a royal blue color, but I'm wearing one. And we're going to teach you how to make one. And these will be sold to raise money for VAST. So Taylor has the supplies. They're very easy to make, and we'll come around. And what we want you to do is take one piece of ribbon fabric from the plastic bag, pass it on to your neighbor. The next thing that will come after that will be pin backs. Take a pin back out of the bag, pass it to your neighbor. So each person gets one piece of fabric and one pin back. And then lastly, glue dots are coming around. Rip off 2 glue dots and then pass it to your neighbor. So you'll all have one piece of fabric, one pin back, and 2 glue dots.
Y'all get that?
We'll help you. We'll help you.
Okay, thank you guys very much. You have to have good eyes to see these things. Beware.
And we'll show you how to create the finished product.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Some of them have enough to do more than one, so they might be.
Oh.
Yeah, I brought several pieces. I didn't know how many we
Each one needs
so.
2 glue dots?
2 glue dots.
Okay, so you might
So if
need
people want to make more than one, we have plenty of supplies, but we'll start with one. If you want to make a couple.
You mean not your neighbor's hair next to you? For any purpose?
You want to make more?
I'm trying. I'm trying. They're sticking to me enough.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
guys are busy creating awareness ribbons, give a little thought to this activity that we've described to you, what our class is, what we're doing, and think about whether or not this is service learning. You might compare and contrast it. And let me see. And then you have a pin back, yes? Nope. Okay, so we need a pin back. And again, you can use your checklist to help you discern if this meets the criteria for service learning. Hear that, Dr. Me?
I think we should ask. Go ahead and ask about it.
Want me to ask?
While the last people are finishing up.
Would
If they need any more supplies, if anyone needs supplies, to raise their hand. And we'll come
Is
back.
everyone okay? Does anyone need supplies? Please raise your hand if you do. Yes, the question I'm going to ask you, as long as you all have supplies, we're good. The question I'd like you to think about is this service learning, the activity that Taylor described to you that our class is doing, where we're selling these ribbons to raise money? Do you think this particular activity meets criteria for service learning? And you can use your sheet to look and see if it meets criteria. Does anybody want to volunteer an answer? Yes.
I would think this one does because
Okay.
we have the kind of a course integration, like we're learning how to use blue dots.
Blue Dots 101.
I guess for
Yes.
partners,
Yes.
this is part of a community because we're all doing this together. We're all learning
Yes.
this together.
Yes.
There's an academic part to it, learning about the human trafficking.
Yes.
And assessment is
We didn't talk about assessment, but we
not doing much of it yet.
Not
I
yet.
want to see how well we can put these together.
Okay.
One.
Okay.
Like, no, you didn't really learn.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else? This activity about human trafficking, we're integrating into our course on social work with communities and organizations. We're organizing the campus community in an educational endeavor. We're trying to educate the campus community. And so we're organizing with a community partner called the Valley Against Sexual Trafficking to come to our community and educate, and we've been doing all kinds of publicity, and we're going to raise money for them. I haven't talked about assessment, and neither has Taylor because she doesn't know about it yet. But but eventually the class will be processing how it fit into our course. So I didn't have any other volunteers, so forgive me for jumping in with the answer. So yes, this is supposed to be an example of a service learning activity.
Was the first activity
Good
that
question.
we did service learning? The one where you go online and arrange to have the,
I would say it doesn't because it doesn't really support course integration. For example, learning is both discipline-specific knowledge and professional skills. It's not really a skill to donate. It's more like a chore use. Not like a chore, but it's more of you just do it.
right, it's a service, right? We're
Yes.
providing a
Right.
service to someone, but there isn't the academic piece that's required for it to be a service learning type of project or activity. So you're exactly right. The first project that we showed you was not a service learning activity, it was just a service activity. And the second project actually was a service learning activity because it's linked to academics. So when you're in classes, that's really important to remember that if you're in a class and you're asked to do service, if it's linked to the core content of the class, we would consider it to be service learning. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the details with that as well. Okay, so what can we expect the outcomes to be when service learning is utilized on campuses? What are the experiences for the students? What are the outcomes for the faculty? And we know that service learning impacts academic performance of students, and we also know that it impacts the soft skills, the skills that are necessary for success in life. We did some research, a group of us in the Service Learning Initiative Committee, and we've published on this, where we took a look at what were the factors that greatly improved or came out of the service learning projects. And some of the things that we found were that students who participate in service learning projects gain real-world knowledge as well as academic knowledge. They have enhanced critical thinking skills. They have a stronger focus on their academics, and that results in a higher level for students of graduation rate. So students who have the opportunity to participate in their undergraduate programs in service learning activities in their courses are more likely to graduate. And that was not research that we did, but research that we've taken a look at in our publishing. They develop stronger leadership skills, stronger communication skills, and they express a greater understanding of the diversity of society, which is important. One of the biggest things that comes out of it is that one of the findings suggests is that students who experience service learning remain engaged. They remain engaged in the community, and they continue to do service afterwards. So what we would like you to do right now, just for a couple minutes, is we would like you to think about either a course that you've taken or a course that you would like to take or a course that you're teaching, and think about how that class might have benefited from having a service learning project. Think about organizations maybe that you're interested in, that you're involved with on campus, and they can be student organizations, they can be organizations off campus, organizations that you're involved with at home, and think about how those two might be linked. How could we create a link between those service organizations and the classroom setting? Okay? So what we would like you to do is talk to each other a little bit about that, and then we're going to come around and see if you came up with some ideas, and then we'll share them together at the end. And it could be a class you did service learning in as well. Have you had any service learning?
So maybe some kind of a quantitative assessment of the education, like a before.
It's not perfect, but
Okay, so you're looking at taking a student group or organization.
I offered them a lifeline.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know what my theory is. I mean, I know that what we're trying to do is educate a community.
Okay.
So that's how I did it. And they liked it. And they wrote beautiful reflections. Then, of course, they had to write about it. They had to write an essay, which went beautifully. So, did you?
Were enslaved, and then during slavery period. So not just sex trafficking, it's death populations. There's trafficking. Oh, really?
Other things that are, tangentially related, and so they're thinking about other things like, how do we classify that it's a child care desert, right? If there's a child care facility near you, but it's full, how are we going to do that? So like now they're thinking about, how are we going to do that, and how can we keep track of that, and how can we, and that's where the mathy part is going to come in. Yeah, whatever they're going to come up with. Yeah. So maybe. Now, one of the students said there are.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. We'll pay attention. We'll pay attention.
Report on that impact, right? That would suddenly become service learning. So now you've not only learned about the possible environmental impact, but now you've acted on it. So as soon as you add that piece of acting, it becomes service learning. So a lot of anybody involved in a bear tag with your bio? Okay, because there's a big bear tagging project that we do here at Next.
Thank you.
So I think some of you came up with some really good ideas and are starting to think about your courses in a little bit of a different manner, and looking to link maybe an actual act of service along with the information that you're learning. Taking even a basic English class and utilizing that basic English class to assist individuals that have maybe writing or reading disabilities, and going out and assisting them with those types of things. We had an idea with regard to biology and gathering biological information and environmental information in order to be able to help particular environmental groups and organizations in the area. So we had sign language club teaching some of the younger kids, or sign language class teaching some of the younger kids out there sign language and expanding their knowledge about the deaf community. So all of these ideas, it's very easy to come up with, I think, ideas that can be turned into service learning in all of your different classes. But we do have to stop for a minute, and we have to think about course design. We have to think what the components are that are important regarding course design. When we're taking a look at developing a course that contains service learning, a service learning course or a service learning project should include all of these particular areas. And we're going to briefly go over each of them. So it needs to be integrated with the course that you're doing. You need to be able to ask yourself the question, if you're a faculty member developing this project, will all the students be required to do it? Will only some students be required to do it? Will they do it in groups? Will it be considered extra credit? How many hours of service is expected? You know, it's not reasonable to say you're going to do 200 hours of service during the semester. It might be reasonable to do 3 hours of service during a semester, or a couple hours of service during the semester, depending on the course. What are the course assignments that are directly connected to these particular aspects? Right? Which assignments prepare the students? Which assignments are going to be graded and are part of the assessment? And most importantly, what type of reflection activity is going to be asked of these students as part of this process?
Okay, and so we all know that we grow and we gain our own growth is when we get out of our comfort zones. So when you're designing a course and you're a professor, you're used to designing, but suddenly when you have to design something that's for service learning, it's a little bit different and a little bit challenging. And there are challenges all over the place. So we know when we're designing a course, or even if you're part of a course and you're going to help a professor design a course, that'd be cool, co-design a course with your professors. You need to think of the bookends of that course. And on one end, when you're first starting, you always need to think of the objectives. What are the students going to be able to do? So that's what Luann was talking about when she was talking about that you have to think of all those little assignments that are going to go along the way. What will the students do? Will they write a paper? Will the students be able to write a lesson plan? Will they create a needs analysis? Those are the objectives of the course. But then you have to think of what are they going to be doing at the end of the course. They're doing all this kind of stuff to prepare and work out. But by the end of the course, will they be able to work with a bunch of diverse perspectives and come up with a meaningful solution to problems? Okay? Will they be able to problem solve in a way that they couldn't had they not had that experience? And lastly, of course, we all know that you have got to think about how you're going to measure it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But one of the key things about measurement is it going to be a team thing? Are you going to work with other people? Are you going to work with your individual? Are you going to be by yourself? And then you have to think of the tools behind that. How are you going to get there? Okay, how are you going to get to that top? And that's what you have to decide. And the other thing that's super important with service learning is the part that is not in any other course. You have to think of your community partner. And this adds an extra layer of complication. And so, first of all, you have to identify that community partner. And you have to think, what are my criteria for selecting that partner? And is the student, or are the students going to go out and select that by themselves? And one of the examples that you'll see later, we did have our professor have our students go out and select their partners. The class may select a partner. Something may happen where the whole class says, hey, I want to choose this, like what happened in Laurene's class or Dr. Clossey's class. Or in my case, many times, I choose a partner, right? And we all work with that partner, and we decide, I'm going to do that. But I have my criteria set up to meet my course learning objectives. But here's the part that also gets more complicated. You have to think of the partner's needs, because a partner has this thing called time. You have a thing called time. And guess what? Those two timetables don't match up. The partner either wants things right away, or they want things a year from now. But in a class, you have a finite period of time. At most, you have 15 weeks. But most of the time, it's not the entire course. So you have to think of what those time needs are. And then as a result, you might want to have some agreements in place so that you can spell all this out in writing so that everybody's on the same page. And that way they can make sure all the needs are met, and that communication cycle and that feedback loop is going back and forth between the partner and either the classroom or the faculty member there. So what does that mean? It means you have to prepare your students. How many of you feel like you were prepared for college, by the way? Raise your hand, I'm just curious. Those of you who are out here, none of you felt like you prepared for college. You came here, you're like, I was so prepared. Okay. Yeah, it's hard. I don't know if I was prepared for college. Most people do not feel prepared for college, just so you know. It's not a new thing. And so you add this component of service learning on there, and you're like, whoa, man, whoo! It can overwhelm you. And that's something that we found in some research. Dr. Ring found out, especially in her class, when she did a service learning project. In her class, they researched service learning, and they found out how exhausted actually some students can get in trying to meet all those needs. So what do we have to do? We have to prepare the students to work with those community partners. Do they have the knowledge? Do they have the background knowledge in the course in order to give the partner what they need? You might need to learn some skills like interviewing techniques. How do you do some research? How do you do collaboration? And collaboration just always sounds so fluffy and easy, but it's not so easy when you get down into the weeds of everything. Something that many faculty people use is an orientation. So either having the community partner come in and maybe talk about their needs, or the faculty member talking about those needs, or the students going out and research and kind of creating a mini orientation within that field. And the whole goal of that is hopefully that you'll become strong and be able to carry out the service learning project at the end. Brainstorm. Lorraine. Dr. Clossey is thinking so intently.
I thought brainstorming.
She's brainstorming. She is. She's thinking of her next project. She's like, what's that next thing out there? I want it.
So this is what we would like you to do. Think about Now, I don't know how to ask you guys this question because the room is full of students, and as you can see, we were prepared to ask this question of faculty. Maybe you could think of your major and think about some of the courses you're taking and what might be an interesting service project in some of the courses you're taking in your major. Maybe that might be a way. Or yeah, and who could you work with to make that happen?
We shared some a moment ago when we went up and down the aisles. We thought of some.
Anybody have any ideas?
That's a student scenario, maybe. That if you're in a class that isn't service learning, but you have a major project to do, and you wanted to say to your teacher, you know, I want to take this project a step further. I want to do the research, and then I want to do something with it. I bet you a lot of your teachers would say, that's awesome. And what do you want to do? And let's sit down and talk about it. And you know, I'm saying you can initiate this kind of stuff too.
Can you think of organizations you're involved with that could become your community partners?
I believe the chemistry club, I think it was last semester, we did something for people in a third world country to remove a certain chemical, like it was like borax or boron. It was a while ago, I don't remember these specifics, but you know, we did a fundraiser for that organization. It wasn't like service learning because
It wasn't from the classroom.
it wasn't from a classroom, it was a club raising money, and people were like, oh, okay, here's some money.
But you could
But
pair
if
the
we
club.
put it in a chemistry club, or not chemistry club, if we did it in like some of the chemistry classrooms, learned about it, and maybe, you know,
And
did a
then
thing,
it's a club.
it could become service.
That's an excellent idea. So if you linked from the classroom to the club, that's an excellent idea. What about other organizations you're involved with on or off campus?
Well, in my research methods class right now, United Ways, the organization, reached out to the school, and I'm doing the research proposal for them to try to get a grant for a community service project.
Okay, so the United Way is a big organization a lot of people on campus work with. What other organizations are you involved with? Interestingly enough, it can be something you might not think of. It could be the local band or a choir that you sang in that you could do service for them. It doesn't have to be an organization that's necessarily a social service organization that you're working for. It could just be an organization that has a need that you could fill. Any other organizations you can think of?
Two really good ideas. This one and what you're
Anybody
already doing,
involved in
Taylor.
sport?
And
Well, we have one where they do what they call a bio blitz. And so they go out and the students, you know, whoever wants to volunteer, they go out and they look at the animals and identify them and then turn that in so that that area then can know what animals are there, how many are there, or estimate it. So that could be, you could take a class there on a bio blitz.
it's interesting.
You know, so.
Enjoying that activity.
Then that would work for a first year experience class because a person wouldn't necessarily have to be a biology major.
You kind of do have
You
to
do have
know.
to be-
You have
okay,
to
all right.
be able to identify it and not scream when you see it either.
Okay.
Not scream is good.
Or a spider. You know, some people are just aren't outdoorsy, you know. So I would say no on that point. All right.
Anything else anyone wanted to share? If not, then I'm going to have Dr. Carducci give a little, some remarks on the importance of reflection in service learning.
All right, so I'm talking about reflection because I have the zeal of the converted with respect to reflection. When I started doing service learning in 2008, I had a lot of help from the people that were on this committee at the time. They're not here today, but I had a whole lot of help. Well, Dr. French is here. Yeah. I had a whole lot of help with a lot of people. And it came to late in the semester, probably a little bit later than this point in the semester, and the service learning project was going great. And I was thrilled with all the things that they had helped me do in terms of integrating it in my class, and everything was going wonderfully. And they said, okay, now you have to do reflection. And I said, you know, I'm math. I'm over there in the science building. You guys are a bunch of sociologists, you know, and you're in the social work and that touchy-feely thing. And the reflection really sounds like that touchy-feely thing to me, you know, and I don't know. But they had helped me so much that I really felt like I had to do it because they wanted me to, and I owed them right? So that's why I did it. I'll be honest with you. That's why I did it. I made it 10% of their grade on the service learning project, and I assigned a reflection, and some people helped me from the committee, helped me write this reflection document and ask the kinds of questions that I wanted to ask. And wow, was it important. It allowed us to take the project, which their project had to do with helping the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission forecast population growth. And so one group was all in the nitty-gritty of understanding how a logistic population model works. And another group was all stuck in the nitty-gritty of figuring out how to use utility hookup information, the number of utility hookups in an area to predict the population growth in that area. And they were all stuck in these little nitty-gritty pieces. And then we did the reflection. And they looked at the big picture. And the learning came to the front. The project was no longer in the front. The learning was in the front. And so I just became the convert to reflection. And now the reflective part of the project is 30% of the project grade, because it's that much more important to me, and I understand that it's so much more important. And I'm just ready to go with it. Go ahead, Professor French.
The other thing I think is so important is that it's a way, real learning happens between the student and the teacher in a back and forth kind of exchange. And especially at the higher levels of learning, I think around here. And the reflection piece allows us to learn from what the students are learning, to make the project that much better the next time, to help the community partners better next time. It continues to increase the value of the project.
Oh, I would agree completely. It's just absolutely, I'm sorry, the zeal of the converted. I'm trying to rein it in a little bit. I'm just really crazy about it. So there are lots of different types of reflection. So some of it is oral reflection, when you actually get your group together and you say, this is what we did, and we talk about it. And I don't want to say just talk about it. We talk about it and learn from each other and from our experiences. Journal writing is a very popular form of reflection in service learning, particularly if you have a project where the students are going out week after week after week, or twice a month, or if they go multiple times to a site. That type of thing works very well with the journal. Every time you go, you make your journal entry. That's very useful. The reflective essay is what I have used the most in my service learning classes. When I give the students at the end of the thing, I ask them to look back and reflect on what they did, and then I give them some guidance with my, some questions and some things to stimulate them. Because my math majors can write, they actually can write, but they don't always think, they get the touchy-feely kind of attitude going too, and so I give them some concrete suggestions for what to write. An experiential research paper would have the students go out and further investigate a topic, homelessness or whatever that topic is, and then incorporate their experience with the research that they've done. And then the last is the debriefing, and that's, I think, close to what Professor French was talking about.
From the reflective essay too.
Okay. I learned a lot from the essays. That's absolutely true. I have occasionally done debriefing. That's more of a one-on-one where you talk to the student and find out one-on-one what that student did. It certainly happens informally in my office all the time, but I have formally used debriefing also as a form of reflection. All right. Enough zeal.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Could be some sort of interaction with the community partner and the student. Sorry. With the community partner, the student does a debriefing with the community partner.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sure.
What the value
Yes,
was for the
good point.
community partner, what they would like to be different or next time, or what would be more helpful or less helpful.
By the way, how many of you want to have really nice resumes when you leave here? It wasn't pretty, right? This is the way to get a nice resume, okay? It is. It is in that reflection that you're going to get the words that you're going to use for that interview, okay? Because they're going to say to you, so tell me about your experiences, right? And all of a sudden, and what did you learn from those experiences? And how do you work with other people? And what sort of leadership have you taken? And you're going to be able to talk about your experiences and how you did that. So it's in that reflection that you're gaining all of those skills. So let's talk about this. How many of you get tests? How many of you experience tests already? Multiple choice tests? Essay tests? How many of you have written papers yet? No? Yeah, okay. How many of you, so most of you have done both kinds of assessment, all right? We have closed-ended assessment. We have that on the right. And closed-ended assessment are those things that really look at things that they're right or they're wrong, right? There's not a whole lot of black and white in there. The professor has an answer they want you to answer. Or you might get partial credit for those gray areas, okay? But then we have open-ended assessment, all right? And that would be your papers. They're things that are graded by a rubric. They may include that interview in there. They may include that you make a project. Maybe you make a movie about an experience, or maybe you make an ad about an experience, and they're assessing that project. So we have these closed-ended and open-ended assessment experiences. Which one, closed-ended or open-ended, do you think are the kind that are most of the time used to assess service learning projects? Just say it. Open-ended. You got it. Open-ended assessments. Why? Why are open-ended assessments used the most? Any thoughts from anybody? Yeah.
I mean, there's more freedom in them.
Okay. There's freedom. What else? Yeah.
There's no wrong or right answer.
There's no wrong or right answer?
Well, there's no wrong answer.
It was fun doing the project. Would the person get an A? It was fun.
Yeah.
No.
No, but the answers are a good point. They allow more variety, don't they? They allow perspective. Right? We're allowing you to have, yeah, you can say it's fun, but then what do you do? What do you need to do after it's fun?
Explain why.
Explain why. What is it about? Maybe you love the challenge of it, right? Maybe it was like a puzzle that you were fitting together in there, and you're going to talk about those pieces of the puzzle coming up. So you're right. In those assessments, those open-ended assessments, you can then gather that information that you need. Those open-ended assessments are also the things that prepare you for your next step. And Dr. Clossey is going to give us some background, because in everything we do, there is a foundation which we stand on, and she's going to give us the foundation.
And we didn't invent service learning after all. It has a history. And the history is generally said to have begun with John Dewey. And he provides a philosophical basis for learning. There's actually a fun story about John Dewey. He was at the University of Chicago. He had a colleague named Hutchins, and he and Hutchins used to debate back and forth about what a good education meant. And they were completely at odds, and they would criticize each other all the time. Hutchins thought that knowledge should be acquired in the university by studying the great writers. And Dewey said, yeah, but the great writers are dead, and what's that have to do with what's going on now? Students shouldn't just read the great writers and attain wisdom and nobility. They should actually apply what they learn to current problems. And it was in that, application that the desire to learn would be stimulated. So that's where the seed of thinking about service learning can be found. It can be found in John Dewey. And then you'd think maybe something happened after that, after the 1930s Dewey and Hutchins debate. But that's it, they just debate. And nothing really much happens to change in the academy until the 1960s, which are a very turbulent time of unrest. But students start to get involved. They get involved, college students, as you guys know historically, they get involved in the civil rights movement. They do the sit-ins at the lunch counters. They get involved on the freedom bus rides. They get involved with Vietnam War protests. The Red Power movements, they form Students for a Democratic Society. There are teach-ins. And some professors in the academy become very interested in this. And Randy Stucker, who writes a book on the history of service learning, says that, a lot of what happened in the colleges during the 60s, we know what happened on the news, but we don't know everything that happened in education. And he has interviewed a lot of college professors from that period, and they were so fascinated by what the students were doing that they would tie social activism deliberately into the coursework. And they would tie social action about poverty, racism, sexism, and other exclusions into the courses to turn it into a learning experience. And so some observers say this was the most engaged, I'm trying to find the words now, this was one of the most academically engaged periods. The 60s, though, do end. The 70s become called the me generation. And this kind of impetus to go out and be active and change the world seems to sort of quiet down. There's a researcher named Alexander Aston. In 1966, he began doing an annual survey of entering freshmen. And he would follow them okay, Dr. Green is familiar with this. He would follow the students longitudinally over time. So every year, he would take a survey, follow them over time, and look at trends and look at how they were learning and changing and growing. I hope I'm representing this right, because this is your area. And people have subsequently become very excited about what's going to be in the freshman survey every year. But by the time the 1980s came around, a disquieting result was found in the freshman survey. And what Aston noted was more self-absorption and less interest in activism. And so the former students from the 50s and 60s who were activists were like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. And so in response to that finding, a group of college presidents from Brown, Georgetown, and Stanford founded Campus Compact in 1985 to try to bring this kind of engaged learning back. And they were given great impetus by the passage of the National and Community Service Trust Act of 1990, which established a federal commission on national and community service. President Clinton created the Corporation for National Community Service, which sponsors AmeriCorps. And then in 2009, President Obama wanted to, he had a goal that the U.S. would produce the most college graduates. So he commissioned a task force to study the higher education environment. And they produced a report called A Crucible Moment, which really emphasized the importance of civic engagement. So this is kind of a very quick and brief history. It starts with a philosophical idea by John Dewey, goes quiet, and then students themselves become engaged, and professors are excited, and it seems to matter. And so it eventually becomes institutionalized.
We all know that right now our government's in an interesting place, right, where they just want to
That's a
spend
good
money
point.
on a lot of social issues. And it was just voted 2 weeks ago that they would then fund this aspect of service in the federal government. So it's interesting. It gets bipartisan support.
That is a good observation. Very good observation. So it's here to stay, we hope.
We certainly may also be at a period of time where young people who are in high school and in college are again becoming more active and involved in what's going on. What we wanted to do next was to go through some other examples of service learning that have been completed by members of the Service Learning Initiative Committee, to give you an idea of the range of types of activities that can be completed. And our examples are ones that are appropriate from freshman level all the way through to the graduate level. So we try to give you an idea of how it can progress all throughout your learning experiences. So Dr. Carducci had members of her class present on various types of social topics. Then the class voted, and they selected homelessness as the class focus for their project. Each of the students then went out and did 3 hours of community service related to homelessness. Most of them did it over the Thanksgiving break. Some working at Habitat for Humanity, some in soup kitchens, and some in the homeless shelters. And that was tied into her first year experience class. And it was simple, it was just 3 hours. Professor Waymeyer uses a variety of her different digital media and technology classes where they get together and they produce telethons and they produce auctions for various community partners. And so they get real world experience with that. Some of the students are quoted as saying, "It really made me feel a part of something bigger. It made the class come alive." Dr. Smarandescu's class, it's her marketing class, they created a promotional packet and put it together for an organization called Rocksteady Boxing, which is a boxing program to assist individuals with Parkinson's disease. And they created the promotional packet to make people more aware of the fact that there is a new organization in Stroudsburg. Dr. Sockman and currently Dr. Engerman took their educational students to J.M. Hill School after school, and because it was a digital media and technology class, they took what they learned in digital media and technology, and they went into the class and worked to foster literacy development in the elementary school students. Dr. French, who's here today, her children's theater class performed The Wizard of Oz for the Monroe County Head Start, and they also, as you can see there in the image, they did some mask making projects with them to engage them in art. Professor Majeur, he did Paint the Town. So in this particular situation, his 405 illustration students, which are senior level students, partnered with community businesses and various organizations on campus. And then those students had to go out, create and install murals on the windows of the businesses that were related to the theme for the homecoming that we had. Dr. Carducci's math modeling class, which we can talk about, that particular class actually had to create an Excel spreadsheet. And what that spreadsheet did was it calculated the worth of land when it's undeveloped based on the environmental factors, so that you could prove that there was some worth to undeveloped land, that it wasn't just useless sitting there undeveloped. My aphasia, my class, it's a graduate level class, it's a clinical practicum class, and the students in my group work with clients who have aphasia, and every week they meet with them, and every week they do activities that are designed both to improve the client's skills, but also support those clients emotionally and build confidence for those students. One of my students after that experience said they realized that speech therapists don't just make a change in speech and language ability, but they actually change the quality of life. And so they were able to see the long-term strong impacts that having aphasia has on your day-to-day living. And they realized that they weren't just helping them with those little skills, but they were helping that client's overall quality of life and how they felt about it. So there are a lot of different things that are involved in the best practice, and you can see all of them up here. One of the primary ones being academic rigor. We don't want to put in place service learning projects that would delete that academic factor. It's very important that learning objectives are clear, that the partner selection is appropriate for the class, and that strong learning strategies are used by the faculty in those classes. Students need to be prepared to interact with the partners, they need to be prepared with the knowledge that they need, and they have to be asked to reflect, and that's really what pulls the learning together. I think one of the most important things is service learning is an integration of the best that we can offer at a university. It takes that academic knowledge and combines it with meeting the needs of the community and engaging the students, and really helps to fine-tune not only academics, but those soft skills and the skills that are needed for success later in life. So that's kind of it. What? Questions? Any questions about service learning? How about some feedback from the students? Do you think, one second, Bob. Would you be more interested in classes if they contained a service learning component now that you know what it was? How many of you think that you might like to take classes that have a service learning component to it? What would be the drawbacks do you think? Would there be drawbacks?
Maybe like time, like if I'm taking a lot of classes, I'm not gonna have enough time to
Okay, so that's definitely something faculty have to consider, how much time is involved for the students. I think that's an important point to make. You guys are nodding yes. Why?
I feel like it would engage me more. Like I would actually like want to come to class and like do something, like coming out of the, like bring something like come out of the class, not just to go to class, just to go to class, and like I bring something, like I learn and like I help other people learn about other things.
So the experience itself would be rewarding,
Yeah.
right? You would get some reward from that experience.
I feel it could also help build like a sense of community in like classrooms and as ESU as a whole.
Right, I agree with you. I think that's very strongly that service learning can make you feel like you belong here and make you feel like this is part of your community and you're not as isolated. Because I do hear from college students a lot that they feel isolated, especially when they're new and they're freshmen, right? It's easier to get to know people when you're having experiences, those types of things. Other comments, suggestions, Bonnie?
Oh, I had two questions. One, I have some reflective essays from one of the classes that I've done with service learning, and I've been always meaning to do this, but I was wondering, have any of you taken those reflective essays and done a qualitative analysis on it to see what's coming out of it? It's on my list of things to do.
I'm doing that right now
Okay.
with the 262. I have that I don't have an essay, but I did journals. Anybody here use Google Docs? Okay, so we use Google Docs journals, and I commented on all of them. Yeah, I'm doing that, coding it out.
Right.
Yes.
Right, because it seems like it would be a good scholarly way to pull out useful information.
And it's nice when a student writes and does that journaling, you get a window into their soul, right? How they're really thinking about the information, right? As opposed to how you want them to think, it's how they're really thinking.
And we did take a look at, as part of, before your group got involved in their service learning piece for helping us, we did take a look through our research. We did a qualitative analysis and took a look at the types of comments that students made across all different disciplines. And found that across all different disciplines there were specific themes that were obvious, no matter whether it was math or it was speech pathology or it was art or it was theater. The students tended to have the same types of themes and experiences that were important to them. Was that two questions?
My second question is, do you have any recommendations on how to help students with the ambiguity that comes with a service learning project that just isn't there when you have a canned project where you decrease that variability?
I think that questioning place is vital.
I agree.
Project. I think that the problem with education right now is it's too prescriptive, and that's not how the world is. And the biggest help that we can give them is by them having to think through how to, some aspects of how to do it. And then once
how do you help them with that? How have you helped them with that?
Steps. By breaking it into steps, and so that they're not thinking of the whole thing all at once.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing. And
That they're unsure, because they're very concerned about grades, right? Like, so if we give an assignment out, and I know, like, there's a bunch of speech path people here, and they're super concerned about grades. But I think that's the biggest focus. If they can understand how they're going to be graded. And I think that's important. So asking and being specific that you want depth. Giving them specific things in their reflection that they must have at least 3 specific points. Trying to provide a rubric ahead of time for what content needs to be included in the reflection can really bring that angst down a little bit for them.
And another thing I would say is examples of past projects that may not, it may not be this project and it's different, so they still have some solving they have to do, but they kind of see ways other people did it related to your subject matter.
It's also a good example. Thank you.
Do you all have a sense of what percentage of courses have service learning components incorporated?
On our campus, we do not.
Not a percentage.
Yeah.
When we have done our surveys that are like a hit or miss, and we know that survey return rate is pretty low, but usually I would say based on past practice, there are at least 30 going on a year, at least. And that's those that are reported. That's why I say I know there's at least, because I know people that do it and don't report it.
And some courses are specifically designed that way. So like our advanced clinic course, we run a clinic on campus. So all of those students are automatically doing service learning. I think there's a lot of service learning going on in our clubs, linking the classes and the clubs together. The faculty that are the head of those clubs are combining those types of things. But my guess is that there's a lot more service learning going on than we hear about, because people aren't even sure that that's what it's called. Because that is me. I was doing things in my classroom, and I met up with these guys, and they go, well, you're doing service learning. I'm like, what's that? I've never heard of it before. You know, it's just what I do. And so I think that's a piece of it, is that I don't know that there are specific questions geared towards that in a lot of the surveys that we take on campus.
So as a community member who has benefited from the service learning of your students, I would say thank you. And you know, I would want you to know that the work that you do as part of service learning benefits a lot of different people, and maybe that feedback never comes back to you, but it's greatly appreciated.
Just have a question though. How is service learning in high schools? I mean, are they doing any of that kind of stuff, or?
I was a freshman, so high school, we didn't do anything.
Okay.
But there are some schools that require it.
Yeah, like East Stroudsburg. Anybody here from East Stroudsburg?
There are local schools here that are doing it.
They're the English club there, one of the that's tied into English, they do a ton of service learning. And that's what
Some of them have done the service learning where they create, the class educates themselves about a project, and they do a documentary film at the Pocono Community Theater. So they did one on rape culture that was fascinating. Did a really good job.
I was just curious.
I'm trying to remember.
Bangor High School, when my kids went there, everybody was required to do a service project. They could choose their own project, but then they had to do the project, prove that they did the project, make a presentation in one of their classes, and write a reflection.
Okay.
So some of them are doing it. There was a big push, my kids have been out now for a little while, probably about 10 years ago, where that became, everybody was trying to make that a statewide law, that there had to be service accomplished, but that's kind of fallen to the wayside as far as mandating it. Because it's difficult to monitor, and it takes a lot of time for somebody to gather that information to prove that they did or didn't do it, and there just wasn't the personnel pretty much at the high school level to manage those types of projects.
My daughter's school, which is a bit further away, but they do something called Trips Week every week, and they have to raise money for something. So that, like, they've been doing, they used to call it Katrina relief, but they've been going down to New Orleans and working in the Ninth Ward, and they raise all the money for the trip, they raise all the money for the materials, and they go and they help rebuild. But they do different projects each year. You know, it could be like organic farming, or where there's learning, and there's also, they're doing service on an organic farm.
And we have to remember, when we're talking about service learning, we're tying it directly to a course, to content. So a lot of learning goes on in service, but service learning is directly connected to course content. And it's a pedagogy to how to teach courses. So I think that's a difference too. And some courses lend themselves to that, and other courses don't. I teach a freshman level course that doesn't necessarily, in phonetics, that doesn't necessarily lend itself very easily to service learning, because there's a lot of just core skills that have to be learned. Other questions, comments, suggestions from students? We take ideas. No?
I mean, it'd be nice to throw in a couple if you're not doing any at the moment, you know, for some extra bonus points.
That was directed at me. That was directed to me. He likes the bonus points in pre-calc.
Everybody needs bonus points in pre-calc. Pretty much.
Oh, so by the way, are you still taking in that reflective essay for magic tricks? Okay.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank you for staying. And I hope that you seek out courses that have it, or inquire with your professors about things that you could do that maybe aren't part of the course syllabus at this time.
All right, thank you.